Just
All rise. Auburn County Court, South Carolina, session. Auburn Black Hill Williams, for Mayor Station, Auburn Black Hill.
just waiting for everybody to calm down here. Ms. Russell, would you do our invocation, please?
Heavenly Father, thank you for doing this each day to give to us. Thank you for all my brothers and sisters here come together to talk about things that have our town to love. Thank you for praying.
Mr. Ferguson? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And please be seated. Okay. Ms. Rita, would you call the roll, please?
Beverly Atwood, here. Mary Ann Baker, here. Ian Buckmaster,
Here.
Shane Burton,
Here.
Gary Clarity,
Here.
Richard Davis,
Here.
Coy Dickey,
Here.
Bill Ferguson,
Here.
Jerry Ford,
Here.
Bubba Gregory,
Here.
Landon Gully,
Here.
Richard Harsh,
Here.
White Jewell,
Here.
Richard Johnson,
Here.
Rachel Jones, David Nonner,
Here.
Amber Russell, here. Lonnie Taylor,
Here.
Gary Walsh,
Here.
Steve Whitaker,
Here.
Ethan Bowles. 19 present, 1 absent.
The purpose of this call meeting is to discuss the resolution 2021-18-722, the Water and Sewer Department construction. At our meeting last month, there was a motion to postpone that to our next term regular meeting. After request from the Water Board, they requested that we have a special call meeting because they're, I guess you'd say, under the gun time-wise to be able to meet the deadlines on the contracts on that building. In consultation with County Attorney Beller and the mayor and myself decided that we could do a call meeting, a special call meeting. We have that authority. And we did that jointly. We both called for this meeting to be tonight. For us to take up this business, we're going to need a motion or an amendment to the motion to put it off to the 26th meeting. So first of all, it would be best for us to have a motion to amend. Mr. Ford, I believe, made that motion. Mr. Ford, would you like to amend that motion?
Mr. Chairman, in view of the fact that I made the motion, I will amend my motion upon the vote of the county court to go ahead and hear and/or vote on that tonight.
So Mr. Ford has made the motion to amend his original motion to take this up tonight. Is there a second to that motion? I believe Mr. Walsh had the second on that one. Okay, we will need to vote on that and able to be able for us to act on this tonight. Appreciate your motion, Mr. Ford. I think let's just go ahead. Can we use our consoles on this one? Everybody remember how to use your console to vote? It's not a, now it is. Voting on the amendment to be able to take it up tonight and to vote on it tonight. Okay. The key to your left, the plus sign, once you hit it, it'll light up green. If that's a yes, if you want a red, or a no, it's on the right, and an abstention is in the center. I'm showing 19 votes. Does anyone wish to change their vote? If not, record the votes, please.
I'm showing 19 yes.
We have 19 yes, so we will proceed. Okay. Resolution 2021-18-722, Water Sewer Department Construction. Pardon? Okay. It's on the back of that sheet in case anybody needs to know exactly what it does say. And we had some discussion about this. I think there was a lot of questions that needed to be answered, was why we were putting it off. I hope everyone has had time to get their questions answered, and we'll open the floor for discussion. Mr. Gully.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, I'm sorry.
I have something before we get started on this. Before the Education Committee on July 8th, there was a discussion about the Water Board meeting. Went on for 7 minutes and 7 seconds. That was outside a called meeting. It was discussing something in front of this body. That is an Open Meetings Act violation. It was deliberation. There was courses of action discussed. I've spoken to the county attorney about this. He's here to answer any questions. I don't want to put words in his mouth. He agrees with me. That was an Open Meetings Act violation. To cure that violation, we need to have those same discussions at this meeting tonight.
What meeting was it?
It was before the Education Committee meeting on July 8th. I have a recording here I can put on. It goes for 7 minutes and 7 seconds. I can go through the items that was discussed. The first one was talking about the sewer line that was run. You're really not going to lose money on that because there's a housing development coming in behind Piggly Wiggly that's going to be able to recoup their funds on that. Some of it is inaudible because the microphone was over here, not over there. There was discussion that this grew, that we're looking at growth we're experiencing for all our bodies, offices, or anything like this. Building's not going to be big enough. There was discussion about the administration building. We got it 6 or so years ago and we're already outgrowing it. Where are you going to go if you have to expand? If you're going to expand an administration building, the logical place is go out the back of the administration building, so you may have to use some of that land for parking. There was a question asked if there's been any other property identified for the location of this building. The response was not right now, or excuse me, right now, no. There was discussion about, yeah, it does make sense for all employees to be under one roof, but probably not the best place for it. There was discussion about if a new jail is built with what we've discussed or has been discussed at the County Corrections Partnership Committee, which will be moving the sheriff's office into that, then that'll open up City Hall. And it already has some of their storage out back. So even if for 2 years, then that building will be available. Says it has everything they need. There was a commissioner that said it'd be nice to be given some options. There was another statement, it'd be nice to look at it with fresh eyes and see if there's any other options. At that point, Dr. Satterfield walks in and says, I quote, "Is this the Education Committee meeting or are you already having a meeting?" End quote, and that's the end of 7 minutes and 7 seconds where discussion stops. So it's my assertion that that is a violation of the Open Meetings Act. It was 2 or more county commissioners having an unofficial meeting discussing or deliberating on courses of action. I've sent that video to the county attorney. He has reviewed it and he's here tonight. He agrees with my assertion that that is an Open Meetings Act violation. So I wanted to bring this out so we cure that, and there is no issues going forward that this gets discussed tonight and it gets decided tonight. And it's not something hanging out there that could possibly throw a wrench into it. So my discussion with the county attorney, again, he's here. You want to ask him some questions, is that those discussions need to be had again out here in public so every commissioner can have their input on it. And I'll go ahead, Mr. Bellard, am I correct in my assessment?
I've had the opportunity to look at the video, and it does appear that the violation of under Tennessee Code Annotated 844-102, there is a particular code section that dealing with Part C says no chance meeting, informal assemblages, or electronic communication shall be used to decide or deliberate a public business in circumvention or spirit or the requirements of this part. Now, if some of you may recall, we had an opinion letter that I mailed out. I trust everyone got it. It was on June 1. And in that particular letter in of itself, the word deliberate is a conscious, willful act toward making a decision on a matter and does not have to be a decision in and of itself. Therefore, it was my opinion in reviewing the videotape that there was enough, not only content and context with regard to the discussions, that there was sufficient enough to determine that that was a deliberation, whether by design, willful, or neglect. It doesn't matter. It still violates the Open Meetings Act. Now, in order to cure that, if my letter would also indicate, need to have those discussions out in an open meeting itself, which is what we have here tonight. And the reason you do that is simply by virtue of the fact that there are particular issues that could arise should there be any type of action brought. Any action you take tonight could be declared void, null and void, or there could be potential for injunctive relief. So that's the curative aspect of the Open Meetings Act. You have the opportunity to do that tonight. Any questions for me with regard to what I've stated?
So if we have a list of these things that were discussed and we discuss each one,
I think
that is curative.
you need to have a deliberation in this body on those issues and have those discussions. Obviously, the concerns were there. Obviously, everybody's got a part as far as but it needs to be out in the open. This is what this particular meeting is called for. Okay, so that would be a curative for it, and I would say that in just looking at it from a standpoint of court of equity, court of law, that would be a defense to that, is what that would be. And I think you wouldn't run into any issues at that point.
So we are deliberating those issues that were talked about, but do we need to specifically address each one?
I would discuss those issues, get it out in the open. That way that doesn't carry with it. That way you have no room for any allegation that it wasn't brought up. Okay, that way you've got it out in the open, ergo Open Meetings Act. That's why that cures it. In other words, you're
Sure.
bringing it up afresh, if you will.
Okay.
Otherwise, if you don't do it, then it's subject to a procedure that could render any decision, good, bad, or indifferent tonight as void.
Okay. Mayor, do you have a list of those?
I just read an entire list of those. I'll go through it again.
I asked if you had one printed out that we could have to go down as a checklist.
I don't
Oh, I
have a
was
printed
asking.
out copy. No, sir. I just got
Okay.
what I wrote down,
Okay,
making
but
notes
then-
earlier today.
Bring them up one at a time for us, please, and let us have time to discuss each one. Thank you.
All right.
What's the first one?
Excuse me, I hit the button again. The first one was about the development of townhomes going behind Piggly Wiggly, and that can pay for the the sewer line that was going to the building property. So the assertion was, so that's not wasted money. So that would be the first issue.
Ms. Baker?
I had a comment. Is this not also an ethics violation by them meeting and discussing it?
Pardon me?
Is it not an ethics violation? Does it not need to come evidently something?
Not unless someone is monetarily. Can you help with that, Counselor?
I don't think so. I think the curative instructions that I've given within that is an issue. Now, ethics is totally a separate issue involved in that. I don't have that right in front of me, your rules of ethics, but just generally, without having done further inquiry into that, I would not think so. Most of those ethics issues, most of them deal with monetary issues, gifts and honorary and things of that nature.
Okay. So the first issue was the water line or sewer line that had already been constructed at the back of the administration building off of White Oak, I believe it was. Is that correct, Tommy? And that was solely done to address the needs of this building, or was it also to possibly be used by a development in behind that would have joined on to it, and also the warehouse Was it not?
Yeah, originally it was just for the building, but during that time, the owners for the property next door actually come over and said, we're thinking about building this, and we actually lowered that line lower, buried it deeper so they could accommodate that at their cost. So that's not come to fruition yet. I think they're starting it though. But that was the reason we lowered that last few section of manholes in order to get that building to flow, right?
Was the warehouse building down there also added on?
Yes, we added the Color, and also it'll get the other building as well. The Garrett, is it Garrett, was it Garrett Brothers? Garrett Brothers, yes.
I believe, Mr. Gully, you asked to be recognized next.
I did. Mine was reverting back to the Open Meetings Act part of it as well. It's my understanding, Mr. Beller, if you don't mind answering this with me, that under the, I think we watched it's not MTAS, the CTAS, I'm sorry, right up through Knoxville. When we watched that piece about a year ago, you had us do an Open Meetings Act piece. It's my understanding in that if a chance happening were to come about between members of the body and they were to have a discussion, as long as they opened that discussion back up and it voiced that they had a discussion at the next meeting, that becomes a non-Open Meeting Act violation. Is that correct?
There's a total difference between a chance meeting and a meeting in which there are deliberations or decisions made. It's not the same thing. A chance meeting is when you go to Walmart and you see each other in the grocery aisle. But when that chance meeting is converted over into discussions as related to topics that need to be put on an open meetings, and that's when it becomes a violation. So you can have a chance meeting, no issues, but when that chance meeting develops into something else, even an innocuous conversation that you have, that's the pitfalls with the Open Meetings Act, particularly as commissioners. Does that answer your question?
I think it is my question, but in following back up on that, I think if that were to happen and there were to be a discussion that took place, those members can come back to the body in the next meeting and open that discussion and state what was stated, and they're back in the clear on that piece. Am I correct on that?
It's basically what I just said a while ago about purging that in those and having that brought up tonight. Okay.
Anyone else like to speak to this point? Mr. Davis, you're recognized.
I guess I'll just bring up at this point, since you're talking about the sewer line, that probably was in reference to my question when I'm trying to understand more and more about this to make a decision about, you know, this list that we've got of money that's been spent on this project already, and me trying to help decide, well, what amount of this money is going to be totally a loss that's already been spent by the water department if this does not go through, if I remember our conversation correctly. And I believe that's where, you know, we got to talking about the sewer line, it possible that also is going for something else, not just to that building. So I'm just bringing up I'm pretty sure I'm the one that asked the question about, okay, well, you know, the property cost $8,000, but how much more is going to be lost out of this money that's already been spent? And we discussed that for a few minutes. I also wanted to just ask for just my clarity, I guess. So before this meeting happened tonight, the work meeting, right? There's discussions amongst us, several others of us, about some of the ordinances that we had in our work meeting that was going to be for our next meeting on the 26th that we're going to vote on. So, and that was 2 or 3 or whatever standing around talking about that. So now is that also something that's just like what you're talking about right now? Before a meeting ever was started, we were sitting and having a few of us discussing. I guess I'm just want to make sure I understand clarity here.
Mr. Beller.
The answer is those topics need to be discussed within the parameters of the workshop. Okay, that's why you have that, because that's where the notice is. That's where you have a notice where 7 o'clock tonight, we're going to have a meeting. These are going to be the items on the agenda for discussion. The public at large has, and I know sir, you were not, you recently have been appointed. You did not have the benefit of having the correspondence or some of that. So I'll get that to you. Okay. So
Orientation online, like probably a lot of others haven't
certainly,
had to, but I want to understand. So really, no one sitting here at no time can I really have any discussions about anything to do with anything I hear that might come up in a meeting.
if you have a deliberation toward that subject in the sense that you are having that toward making a decision, the answer is no. Okay. Now, if there's something, it's a different, I know you think, well, you're splitting hairs a little bit. Somebody comes to you, says, we've got a meeting tonight. We're going to have this issue. That's a little different. That's in the neighborhood of public information more than anything else. So you're not dealing with a situation where passing along that type of information. It's when you go a step further toward deliberating to make a decision on what you're going to do in particular. Okay, does that make sense? And I'll try to characterize it maybe different ways to make sure I explain it well. Okay.
There's a lot being learned.
A lot of on this issue, sir.
Any other, Ms. Russell?
Yes, that is literally how it feels now.
Absolutely.
I did not hear you. Point your mic toward you a bit, please.
I said, yes, that is how it feels now.
Okay. Any other discussion on the sewer line part of this? Mr. Dickey,
I have a question.
please.
I have a hard time understanding what's going on. I apologize that, but when you leave the courtroom, you're not supposed to go outside and talk about the issue about what's going on, what takes place.
To each other.
Or
You can talk to your constituents. You can talk to the mayor. You can talk to Mr. Ballard. You can talk to the department heads, but we're not supposed to talk to each other about anything that we're possibly going to be deliberating on. We could talk about whether the corn's growing well, unless we're appropriating money to make the corn grow. Okay. Any other discussion on the sewer line part of it? So, next.
Next part of the discussion was about the size of the building and possibly not being big enough. Like I said, it was mentioned about the administration building was moved into just a few years ago and is already going to have to had people to elected officials' offices and might need to expand. And if it expands, it'll go out back towards where this building is going to be built.
So what was brought up, if I'm reading this right or hearing you correctly, was the size of the building and being able to expand it possibly into the future and expansion of the administration building. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. It started out about saying you won't be able to expand this proposed building for the water department. And if you put it there, well, then that could affect expanding the administration building in the future. Or if you expanded the administration building, you're going to be expanding out towards where this building is going to be.
Anyone like to address that? Mr. Harsh.
Is that the only direction we would have in which to expand the administration building would be out the back if we ever needed to add on to it? Would that be correct?
Mayor.
If you're expanding, let's say the register of deeds or the property assessor's office, I would say there's space enough around their offices. You can expand them. It'll actually go to the south and to the west. So it would not go towards where this building is going to be if you're expanding your property assessor and your register of deeds that are on the south side of the administration building. Now, if you're expanding the trustee's office, you could take that out of date kitchen area where the water department has their break room right now. You could take that and expand your trustee's office and just remove that and expand your trustee out there. Now, as far as your county clerk, she's pretty much locked into where she is. That's where the thought is. If the water department moves out to this new building, she requested to move over there where the drive-through is because she used it quite a bit during when the building was shut down due to COVID. And then that would often open up her space. And plus that office over there, that space is actually a lot bigger than a lot of people realize. There's a lot of the office that you don't see where Mary Dale sits. There's actually a vault and some further rooms that go through there. So there is space in that area if you needed to expand some other offices in the administration building if the water department's not there.
Anyone else? Mr. Gully?
Just asking a clarification question here. These, quite a few of the things that we're talking about here have already been brought up in the original commission meeting where we moved this forward. So continuing to talk on the same piece outside, or we're just bringing those same conversations back up. Here's what I'm getting at, right? Because these were brought up in the original commission meeting, which in turn we moved this meeting to the, well, we moved it to the next, we postponed it or tabled it until the next meeting. So I'm just asking a clarification there on that case. I understand that this happened outside of an open meeting, but these pieces that we're talking about, every one of these are things that have already been brought up in a meeting that was a scheduled meeting. Just kind of trying to get some clarification on how that goes in the forward.
Whether they were discussed or not, you had a group of 5 commissioners went outside a meeting and deliberated towards a course of action on July 8th. This is to cure that. Okay, if you don't cure it, I can go in the next water board meeting, play this video and say it's my make a motion that the water board files a open meetings act violation against the county commission based on that video. And your county attorney's already told me I've got a good case. I'm trying to get this issue done, get it over with, address these issues going forward so nobody can say it wasn't discussed in an open meeting. If you have 5 commissioners speaking on something and the other 15 are not there, they don't get to participate in that discussion. The public doesn't get to participate in that discussion because they didn't know it was being held. So this is to address that issue. Whether you've talked about it in 10 other meetings, you go outside of it and start having those discussions, those deliberations, you've violated the Open Meetings Act. So this is what I wanted to bring it here today, make sure we get it addressed. It's put to bed, we go forward, there's a decision made, there is no coming back on it.
Can I answer your question? Ms. Baker?
I didn't mean to push. I thought of the
sorry.
date.
Okay.
And
Anyone
maybe
else?
it was
Mr.
before.
Ferguson?
I'm glad we're having this discussion tonight because I was in San Antonio and I was stuck. So a lot of these topics that we're going to be talking about in the next couple of minutes are good discussions. I have had those thoughts myself that the administrative building, when we purchased that, we were needing some room because the courthouse we're in right now is so tight for room. And it was such a good deal at the time that we bought it, price-wise, that it was a good thing to do to be in the administrative building that we're in right now. Problem is that as we continue to grow as a county, that's becoming problematic now in terms of the growth. Now we can talk about who can move here and who can move there today and probably resolve our problems today of those things. But just from what I have observed, we got a situation where we have a building in the back there's not much growth that you can have on your administrative. I guess you could go up, I guess you could go down, but we're talking about growth. I think my concern of growth is the growth that we're going to continue to have, not just the growth that we're experiencing at the moment, because there's going to be periods of time where you're going to have a lot of growth. There's going to be periods of time where the growth will slow, but I don't think that the county is going to retract at any time, given what we've seen so far in the last 50 years. So as a commissioner, I am concerned about putting 2 different buildings. This building started out as a shed to store stuff in. And, you know, the only ones that really go into a storage place, which obviously we probably need that for the water department. I've talked to Tommy about that. He said, you know, it'd be good to have things on the roof. It probably is. But when you go from having discussions about something that's something where you just store things where mainly just county employees go into, and you go to another scenario where you have a full-blown administrative building with employees and customers coming in, I think you're looking at a whole different animal. And so for those to be kind of side by side with a place where you don't have a lot of growth to start with, you may end up with 2 buildings in the future that are jammed in there, and someone's going to ask the question someday, well, why didn't they think about that back when they did that? That's something I've thought about. So again, I think these things are good to talk about tonight.
Anything else on the building, the size of the building, the expansion of the administration building? Okay, next.
Oh, I'm going to address some of what was just said.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Ever since I've been on the water board, it was not just a storage building, it was a shop building to bring in the equipment, store it, service it, those kind of things. So it did start out as just strictly where you're going to bring your equipment, where you're going to bring some of your supplies, all that stuff, and have it stored so you could service it, and had a break room for training, or excuse me, a training room, because we're starting to do more training of our water department staff. We're starting to do more online training. So provided a training space, had restroom facilities, shower facilities, because right now if somebody gets doused with raw sewage, they got to go home and take a shower. So it's going to have shower facilities in there. After a while, the discussion did move in towards, it already had some office space in there. So the discussion moved towards converting some of that office space and the map room and some other areas into more of like a teller station and another office, and moving the tellers and everything over there and putting it in a drive-through. But the size of the building itself never changed through all the discussions. The inside allocation of the space, use of that changed, but the size of the building itself did not change. And there is, according to the engineers, there is a room to go to the east to expand at least one more bay for your shop area. And I know I'm the one doing all the speaking, but there are other members of the water board here. If any of them would like to speak, if the commissioner and chairman is willing to recognize them, that they can put on their own 2 cents worth on that. But that's my remembrance. When I came on the board, that was the discussions, was it was originally a shop building. And then probably about, I want to say 8 months later, there was a suggestion made to convert some of that space into tellers locations and kind of convert one of the office spaces into another office, and a map room, convert that to an office. But there also been a change after that. Any space above those offices was not going to be used. But when that discussion came about turning those into office space, that floor has been reinforced as going to be a storage area for equipment and everything like that. So it's actually making more use of the total volume of the building than what it was originally.
Mr. Ford.
Well, going back about 3 years ago, I was present in the meeting when this come up. And Tommy basically specified that he'd like to build a shop building back there. There was no discussion as to what being a complex, is what I'm going to call it, of what they're wanting to do now. Of course, I left after the first year, so I don't know when all this other come together. But a shop building, of what I understood he was going to build, would probably be $200,000-300,000. I didn't hear anything about this until a few months back, when it went from that to $1.3 million. I am not in objection to them building a building, but back there, in my honest gut opinion, is the worst thing in the world they can do. You're not going to create one problem, you're going to create two. They might can grow a little bit back there. Might be a little room for the administrative office to grow a little bit. But why in the world do we want to put the people in Trousdale County in this kind of a condition? You got a lot of old people that's going to come there to pay their water bill. And they got to go back through there and zigzag around through it to get to it. I know somewhere in Trousdale County, there's a better place for this building to go in. I'm not against them having a building, but I will not vote for it to go back there when I see the growth that our county has, and the fact that, no doubt in my mind, it'll just be a matter of a few years. It's going to be not one problem, two.
Thank you, Mr. Ford. I'd like to ask a question, if I might, if you'll indulge me, of the senior members that were here when this land was purchased. I wasn't on the commission. I wasn't in on the purchase of that land. What was it? Does anyone remember the initial purchase, or what it was for, or why we did it? Mr. Harsh?
If this is the same tract of land where the barn used to be on, there were some people that were living in that barn, and there had been some complaints about it. And what the mayor at that time told us is he wanted to purchase this property so that he could take and dismantle that barn he felt like that would be a solution to the problem of people living in the barn as a home, and he thought that was an unsafe way to live.
Ms. Ferguson, I believe you were next.
Yeah, I recall that being that way as well, that was the main topic. And when you talk about
the size of the building didn't change, well, I can sell you a pole barn and put a lot of equipment in it, or I can have an administrative office fully staffed, and you're going to have a whole lot more traffic on a day-to-day basis. That was sort of my point before. It's not the size of the project that I think will come into an issue. It's the visibility and the ability for both buildings to function properly with the traffic that it would have. It didn't really have anything to do with the fact whether something grew in square footage or not. That's kind of my point.
Ms. Baker?
I have the water board minutes from July 25th, 2018, and it says a motion was made by Toby Woodmore and seconded by Mayor Carol Carmen to purchase the Gammons property adjacent to the administrative building for a shop building. The cost of the property is $8,000, and the motion passed. So it said that they were going to build on that property.
Okay.
It's in the minutes.
Okay.
Everyone knew.
Mr. Clarity?
If I remember correctly, the barn that Mr. Harsh was talking about was on the Howell property. It's not part of the Gammon property. It's not part of the property that they said they purchased.
Okay.
So that's the reason I kind of asked the question at the beginning of that statement, was it?
Okay.
And
Okay.
no, as far as I can remember, nothing was ever brought before the county commission to approve the purchase of this. I don't know why, if it was under $10,000, that may be the reason, but it was never voted on. That Miss Rita, I asked you to find it. She said she couldn't find it in the minutes anywhere. So it was never voted on or approved by the county commission to purchase this property.
Mayor, did you want to add something?
Well, I will just comment from the original plan of this building, it was never a pole barn. It was always going to be a steel building, is my understanding. Mr. McFarland's here. He helped put that together. He can answer a little bit further. But I will agree with Commissioner Clarity. I look forward to also to see if it was ever come before the county commission to accept the property. And I couldn't find anywhere where it ever came in front of the commission either. I found the minutes that Commissioner Baker read from the water board voting to buy the property, and Mayor Carmen signed the deed accepting the property on behalf of the county, but I couldn't find any minutes or anywhere showing that the county commission ever voted to accept the property. So it would seem that your question is that a valid transfer of property to the county? And then so I would submit that to the county attorney for his opinion on that.
Transfer that, not without legislative action from this body.
Yeah, I think that's, am I right in that your question, Commissioner Clarity, is since the commission didn't vote to accept the property, are you?
The commission never had any input on it or anything, that it was never brought before the commission.
That takes action by the legislative body, which is the county commission. I mean, in order to do that, in order to say you can build on this property, just the transfer of the funds in and of itself, in my opinion, would not be that that's going to cover it.
I didn't hear you. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Could you get a little closer?
The question was whether or not that is a valid transfer. And the only way you're going to have a transfer is if this legislative body acts and says, this is enough to build this property. Now or construct the building on that particular piece of property. In other words, you're authorizing what is sufficient in order to say this is what you're going to allow to do. It be allowed on that property. Okay. This is the county legislative body is the one that's going to do that. Now, based on what has been read to me, based on what I've heard, based upon the transfer of the funds, I don't think you're going to have that in your minutes specifically, unless maybe there was a recording of the proceedings. I don't know. Maybe they can help clarify that, but I'm not seeing that from that's going to be, that's the whole issue why we're here now, is this body's got to take legislative action in order for construction on that particular parcel for this particular, the way I understand and my reading of what the minutes and everything else. And I think that's what I'd stated previously too. No, go ahead.
I think Mr. Walsh, I'm sorry, Mr. Walsh.
Can Commissioner Baker read what she said again from the minutes?
Sure.
Am I on? Okay. A motion was made by Toby Woodmore and seconded by Carol Carmen to purchase the Gammons property adjacent to the administrative building for a shop building. The cost of the property is $8,000. The motion was passed. But then I've also found there's an ordinance 119-2015-10 that passed that authorized the county mayor to acquire and claim assets and liabilities of the water and sewer utility district. Under that ordinance, isn't the mayor able to sign off when Carol Carmen signed off on the deed? That makes that a valid transaction, correct? Because that ordinance gave him the authority to do that, to claim their assets. And
Mr. Mayor.
I believe the 2015 ordinance is when they brought it back from the utility district under the county. That was 3 years before they purchased the property. So I think it was just authorizing the mayor at the time to accept those assets of the utility district back under the county. So that would, I don't think that applies exactly to this transfer of property. And I'll have to clarify something. I should have probably asked two questions, Mr. Beller. I apologize. The first one was when Mayor Carmen signed the deed, was that a valid acceptance by the county of the property? Because secondly, the use by the water department of the property is the issue here tonight. And I may have stated in a way that sounded like at that time that it approved it, and that was not my intention. I think the question was when, even though the county commission didn't vote on accepting that property when it was bought in 2018, was that a valid acceptance, or did it come under the county just by Mayor Carmen signing the deed?
Is that a question to Mr. Beller?
Yes, sir. I apologize. I'll submit that question to Mr. Beller.
You're talking about the original deed back in where the property was acquired to begin with.
Yes, sir. The 2018 property where the county acquired the property from Mr. Gammons, it transferred over to the county. I'm just thinking Mayor Carmen signed that. There was no approval or acceptance by the county commission at that time. Just Mayor Carmen signed the deed. And I guess Commissioner Clarity's question is probably, was that a valid acceptance to bring it under as part of the property of the county?
Well, let me say it like this. I would have hoped that the legislative body would have approved that. Suffice it to say, it's, the acceptance of that property unilaterally by the county mayor's office. I'm still thinking the legislative body has to act upon that. They control those properties. As my thought process. I'm going back to that statute time and time again, and it vests that authority in the legislative body.
Mr. Dickey, I believe you were next. And
Well, I like to make a statement. I think you're making a mistake when the water department be able to build on that lot, because the administrative building is just growing. So the administrative building needs more room, right? I came from municipality in Davidson County. There's no way you can save money the way the system is doing now. So Tazewell County is growing. It's municipality. So I suggest that the county refund the water department $8,000 out of 101 fund and keep the lot for the administrative building. That's all I got to say.
point. Mr. Walsh.
I'm just to try and get clarity on the issue where the
Thank you.
original purchase price was for a shop or admin building. When Commissioner Baker read the minutes, he said it was for a shop, but now we're talking about an admin building. So I'm just trying to get clarity from the questions that were brought up. What was the original use of that property bought for? A shop is different from an admin building to me.
The,
But a shop,
Yeah.
house offices is what I'm getting at. Admin building, you put offices. I'm just
I
trying to
think it
clarify
was-
from the initial issue when somebody asked what was going to be built there originally to what's turned into today. From the few hundred thousands now to 1.2 million. That's what I'm trying to get. It's been brought up several times, but it's never really been an answer to it.
Mr. Clarity, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, according to, if I understand Mr. Beller right, we are going to have to go back and accept this purchase by the county commission before we can do anything on this tonight. So we're just wasting our time on this, the way I see it here tonight.
Is that a question to Mr. Beller?
Oh, well, the way I understood what he said, the county commission should have approved the purchase of that land before anything was done. And before we can allow anybody to do anything on it, we're gonna have to have a meeting sometime and approve that purchase. And this, what we're doing tonight, is not going anywhere.
I had Ms. Baker next. I'm sorry, push your button. Ms. Baker.
I'm still with the ordinance 159 or 119, 2015, 10. It says that the mayor has the authority to acquire and claim assets. Later on down further, it says the duties of the water utility board. I mean, they have the authority. I don't understand why the school didn't have to get approval to build the school. We were told that, or let me just read my notes that I have. When all this come out, from my point of view, it looked like we were overstepping. So I went back and looked, and in October 2015 is when it was, the water utility was taken back by the county. And then in July 2018, the water board, they approved the purchase of the property. It said in the minutes that they were going to build on it, whether you call it a shop or office space. The square footage was the same. They were never told that it had to get approval from the county commission. And the mayor and the chairman of the county commission are members of that water board, always have been. And then in September of 2018, this body, we established, the water board meeting established committee for the building. September 2018, the water board met and they established a committee for the building that they were planning on building. Jerry Ford was on that committee. He was appointed to that committee. They were still no mention of having to get county approval. And then in February 2021, the water board approved to get bids for the new building. Again, no one mentioned that they had to get county commission approval to do this. So they went ahead and they got bids. The water department has spent $192,552.14 to date. Like I said, the water board is approved. There was only one member that voted no. And it's just, I don't think we have the authority. The water board, I don't see how we have the authority to tell them what they can and cannot build. They're charged with taking care of that department. I mean, I don't know about you, but I don't know what it takes to run a water line. I don't know what it takes to run a water department. But those people do. So, like I said, we were told that at the July 6th, the water board had a special called meeting. There were maybe 5 commissioners there to get any questions answered. And I think I was the only commissioner that asked the water board any questions. I don't think any other commissioner asked questions that night. We were also told that night that the schools had to get approval from the county commission to build. I went back and looked, and that's not the case. The school didn't have to get approval to build on that property. I went back and looked through minutes and I can't find that anywhere.
I have not researched the minutes, but I know that this body approved the multipurpose building. I know this body was in the thick of the high school because a lot of us helped obtain the property for it. So yes, and their budget is approved by this body. So your minutes may not, all it reflects is the votes. And I know I've questioned on numerous occasions the role between the water department and the county commission. And there's a lot of things that needed to be answered. And does this not have to have approval? Now, your minutes not reflect that because it does not reflect all conversations. The tape, I mean, our mayor is really good at making sure that everything is taped. So I'm sure the tapes would reflect whether that was brought up or not. But since that affects me is why I'm answering that question. Mr. Ford, I believe you're next.
I don't know exactly how to say or tell you what I'm going to say, but I'm going to start like this. I've been on this court since the days of Ray Foley. Now, ain't nobody else here can say that. Long time before Bill's daddy was even the county executive at that time. We had one particular county executive at that time, it was before we became Metro. At that time on the county court, we tried to run $80,000 to $125,000 a year in and over what we were going to spend. We didn't have $4.5 million like we got now. The point here is we had a county executive. We come into a regular meeting. It was right after the first of the year, which was sometime probably July. And our county executive had done spent $80,000 of the $120,000 we had left. I can tell you who was sitting right over yonder, Mr. Walter Buckingham. After about an hour and a half discussion, Mr. Buckingham says, I'm going to make a motion, we approve this. But he says, I'm going to tell you one thing, if you do it again, I'm going to do everything I can to see that you get kicked out. Now, to bring all that to this point, the county commission has control of everything in your county. We tell the mayor what we want done, and he's the executor, he does it. But as far as him having the power to do things, no. He has what we allow him to spend. He's got a certain amount of money he can spend, but as far as the power to approve things like that, no, absolutely not. Our lawyer back here is exactly right. I've seen this happen twice, Mr. Butler, and both times it came very close to having a county executive kicked out of office. No, ma'am, he cannot. He does not have the power to do that.
Can we get back to what the question was? The question was the administration building and that building as far as the size. I'm trying to keep us on task. I want to make sure that all of these points are covered. Are there anything else on the size, or you think we've satisfied that? Mr. Ferguson.
For the record, the example of a pole barn was just an example. I didn't think we was going to build a pole barn.
Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. Mayor, what was the next point, please, sir?
I just want to clarify one thing. The
Okay.
Board of Education is empowered to own property on itself outside the county. Whereas right now, when the county took over the water department, now it's under the county, so it has to own any property it has is titled to the county. So that's different than the Board of Education. And I will say, as far as getting some of the questions answered about what's the role of the water board, that came in front of the water board on November 26, 2019. Mr. Jewell asked that question. That eventually led to ordinance 186, 2020-01. It was passed by this body in February 2020 to try to address some of those issues regarding responsibilities of the water department versus, you know, the 2015 ordinance was kind of vague, so we passed something in 2020 to clarify that a little bit. So that discussion started then, and I can give other dates for that. But as far as that should satisfy that discussion, Mr. Chairman, if you want to move on to something else, I've got the next item.
What's the next item, please, sir?
The next item is has there been any other property identified? And there was a statement of not right now. And then there was further discussion about if the proposed future, I don't want to call it jail anymore, maybe criminal justice complex is a more apt term, goes through with proposed sheriff's department building moving over there, then that would free up the current sheriff's department, old city hall for the water board to move into. And those are stating that they've got some storage building out back currently, and then that would be able to suit all their needs. They said they want, said it has a drive through. So that was discussion, the next point of the discussion.
So it was initiated by, was there other property identified?
Yes, sir. It started with, if there'd been other property identified, and then there was a discussion of.
Okay, does anyone want to address that first? Is there other properties that have been identified? And I will say, not to my knowledge, but anyone else? All right, the discussion as far as criminal justice, city hall being possibly available to be used for this or other uses, or what uses would be for that, is more of a discussion, I think, about city hall, but it was in relation of all of this. So anyone like to speak to that? Mr. Nollner?
Can't use city hall, back of it, or the back of it to store anything. It's in a flood zone. That's reading the sheriff on side of it now. Can't use it. It's a flood zone. So how would they be able to store anything back there?
Mr. Chairman. Okay.
Yes, sir.
And I don't mean to sound like I'm laughing at you, Mr. Nolan. I'm not. There is currently a storage building back there. I'll liken it more to a tobacco barn than anything else, that they do have some of their equipment's probably not the apt term. There's probably valves and that kind of stuff, tools and everything in there, but it is uninsulated. So it goes through the normal heating and cooling of the seasons. So when it's 100 and something degrees out there, that stuff inside there gets up to 100 and something degrees. When it drops down to freezing, it drops down to freezing. As far as building back there, this did come up when we started looking at the new jail facility. It is in a floodway. The maps changed in 2016, so it changed from a flood zone, floodplain to a floodway. I did talk to TDEC at that time. You technically can build in it, but there's like a page and a half worth of requirements, and they let me know, oh, by the way, nobody has ever accomplished all these. So as far as building anything beyond what's there right now, you're not going to be able to build anything further.
Anyone else on this issue? Mr. Buckmaster? That should help.
Can you hear me now? The city hall, we've discussed room for the equipment at the building where they propose to put it inside the building. At the old city hall, you've got 4 bays that are not very deep, and quite honestly, where are you going to expand to put all their equipment at there off that one side? And I do agree with the office space is quite ample, but I'm not sure that that's exactly a good place for all of their equipment, everything in one place. I would question the storage of the equipment and parts there.
I think the discussion, if I remember it, centered around that there's already a drive-up window there. There would be plenty of office space, room for training rooms, offices, things of that nature. That was my remembrance of the discussion on that, just for full disclosure. Anyone else? Okay, next.
The next, there was just pretty much a statement that it'd be nice to be given some options. And there was also a statement about coming in when this is something that was done under previous administration and previous county commissions, to get a look at it with fresh eyes and see if there's any other options. So that kind of relates back to the discussion that was had, or the question about has been any other properties looked at. And that was pretty much the end of the discussion. That's when Dr. Satterfield came in and the discussion went towards education.
I will, it's my recollection that I'm the one that made that statement. I'm not sure, but I think I did. And that was one of the pleas that I'd made to the water board, was for us to look at this with fresh eyes and to make sure that there weren't better options. And it was not an attempt to stall, stymie, or cancel the project, just to make sure that we had all the information that was needed for us to make decisions on it. That's what was meant by that. Take it however you want to. Okay. Was that all the points?
That's all the items that were discussed before the Education Committee on July 8th.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Beller, do you think that satisfies our need to try to have full disclosure on those items?
Absolutely. I mean, everything that was discussed during that meeting appears to have been discussed tonight, and even further than that. So I think that anyone looking at what has obviously been taken forth, if this complies with the spirit and intent of the Open Meetings Act.
Okay. I would like to personally apologize if was not, I don't think, my intention or anyone that was there to in any way deliberate or come to anything, decisions. It was just conversation, but we have to be much more careful. And I know that we've been warned before, and we've been warned again, and we will be warned again. It's hard when we're all, I hate to use the term friends, because that's using it probably looselier than it needs to be, but we'll say associates. And we are concerned about county business, and we do want to talk to each other about it, but we need to try to train ourselves to do that dialogue in an open meeting forum. So I would like to apologize for anything that caused the commission heartache or possible legal problems. And I'm sure I can't speak for the other commissioners, but I would like to get that out first. Mr. Walsh.
Question for Mr. Beller, just for clarity. What are some recommendations that a county commissioner can get information or clarity on certain issues other than in work session where they don't violate this?
There's actually an Office of Open Records that is actually in the state. And I can't remember for the life of me right now which department it comes from, but there's a lot of good information. CTAS has a lot of good information. It is particularly dealing with, because we're a rural community. There's a lot more chance meetings than you would say in some say a larger populated area. So it is something we have to be a lot more diligent, but just education, training, reminders, that sort of thing, I think is one of the key topics that you need to look at, because you're oftentimes, a lot of times it may be an innocuous issue that may come up, but then you've got these, particularly in the world in which we live and the trends from which I've seen so much of a move now toward an anti-local government type of thought process, and it has infiltrated every community that I've ever represented anyone in. You've always got a group of folks or individuals that'll love nothing more than to sabotage the hard work that our commissioners, department heads, and county mayors have done in order to benefit the citizens. And so it is something that, as you can tell from my letter, it's something that I frequently try to remind folks about. So does that answer your question, sir?
Not completely. It did, but so like tonight we had the work session. We went over some things. I go back, I review it all. I have questions with issues. What am I supposed to do? Wait till next Monday to ask him to where it's open meetings, or what's my avenue I can go down to discuss those issues to get clarity?
Well, if it's a topic that deals with something, it depends on what it is. You can't deliberate
Right.
toward a decision making. But at the same time, in this particular instance, the thing I would have thought to do is to speak with Tommy, speak to some of the water board members, speak to folks of that individually, do your own communicating and get the information to get those questions addressed. Like as was pointed out earlier, and I don't know who pointed out, but you know, always have a conversation with county mayor, the administration office, me. Those do not violate open meetings. And if I'm not knowledgeable about it, then I'll certainly do what I can to get knowledgeable about it, to impart the information to you.
Well, so everybody knows that. I already knew that information, but thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Davis.
So I'll reiterate the same, as you said. I was a part of the conversation from before. I've been trying to understand all I can about this because it's one of the hottest things I know that's going on right now. I stepped into a mess, whatever. I'm learning. I'm trying to understand. I've asked questions. I've walked it. I've looked at it. I've talked to Tommy. I've talked to the mayor. I've talked to anybody that I could that knows about this all the way for the last several years so that I can make sure that my vote is counted for. And so, again, I'm concerned about conversation that took place today that we're going to be voting on next Monday about one of the ordinances that was taking place. Conversation was taking place before the meeting started about curves and this and that and a few things. Just there's nothing different about that than what we just repeated of some of the same stuff that I thought we had already talked about in here before too. So just want to make sure that I say that now. And I apologize as well if I was in the wrong.
Thank you. Okay. Now we've covered those parts, those points. Get into general discussion. Are there things else? Did we answer all the questions that everyone has? Have we covered all the topics of conversation? If you have other questions, please bring them forward. Mayor?
Yes, Mr. I've been contacted by members of the public, and some of their questions I've not heard been asked by the county commissioners. If it's all right, I'll go ahead and start addressing some of those or throwing those out there for discussion, so it's okay. The first one is being, since this is going to widen out the entrance on the administration building out onto what is a State Highway 141, McMurray Boulevard, Broadway, has TDOT been contacted about that? And the answer to that is yes, TDOT has been contacted by the engineer. He designed that to meet TDOT's requirements. He spoke to them, and basically, as long as he submits the permit request, giving that we've met all the requirements, my understanding is it's pretty much going to be rubber stamped and approved if it comes to fruition. So, and then there was, so as far as any discussion on that, you just want me to run through these items and throw it out.
So it has been designed to their specifications, but it has not been approved by them, but you feel like it will be.
Yeah, they want you to go ahead and design it before you submit it to them for permit approval. That's already been done as part of the process by Mid-10 Engineering. It's been designed to TDOT specifications. In the conversations with TDOT, their feeling is, given that it has been designed to meet their specifications, there won't be an issue getting that permit issued.
Okay. Mr. Ford.
Mayor, you had mentioned earlier that possibly on the south side, there would be room for expansion. When this road is widened out, will that still allow for expansion?
Yeah, there should still be some room for expansion because the current driveway is going to go mainly to the south. So it's in between the current driveway and the trees, it's mainly going to go that direction. So there'll still be room to expand if you want to expand the property assessor's office, which is the one that actually comes out towards the road a little bit of the Register of Deeds office, I think actually recesses back a little bit from where the property assessor's office is. And the Register of Deeds office can actually expand towards Broadway, so it'd be to the west, and the driveway would be to the south.
So there is room to expand the building. One of the questions that I was asked, if we expand the building, is there a place to expand the parking? Because the parking typically is determined by the square footage of the building. So that's another question. Is there room? There may be room to expand the building, but is there also room to expand the parking if we expand the building? That was a question that was raised to me by somebody in the public also on this same topic.
Yeah, Mr. Salee and I went out and looked at the parking lot when we were trying to get it sealed up, the cracks, and get it resealed, the parking lot and the striping for ADA purposes. There is a significant amount of area between where the striping currently ends towards the administration building. So if you're looking at it, it would be actually if you're pulling in, you've got all the stripe spaces to your right, which will be across from the administration building. There are some places there you can probably put about 4 or 5 more stripe spaces, and also the fence line with the property of Tri-County, you can probably go down 2 or 3 more spaces there and stripe some down too. There's a utility pole that seems like I've noticed once vehicles start parking to the west of that utility pole, it creates a problem. I've noticed when people coming in will stop and actually circle around the parking lot and come in versus trying to go towards those trucks. So I think as long as you stay to the east of that utility pole, you can probably strop about 2 or 3 more spaces there. So there's potential for 6, 7 more spaces just with the lot as it is currently.
Okay. Anyone have any question on that, Mr. Gully?
So you bring up a good point. As I'm looking at the map and going over, that's what I had requested the night I seconded the move this to our July meeting. I had requested a map and hadn't received. I wanted a drawing of what we were voting on. I wanted to see what I was putting a vote on. And we're talking about parking. In talking about parking here in the map I'm looking at, we're removing 8 spots of what's already in existence and adding, if I'm counting correctly, 2 spots and a handicap spot, if I'm counting that correctly, at the new admin building for the water department. Is that correct?
I would have to look at the exact map. I think we are losing some parking spaces, whether it's 8, is it picking up? Whether it's 8 or not, I can't tell you, but you're looking at the map, so I will trust that that's what it says.
Ms. Baker?
Again, I just, the building committee approved this, and I don't understand. The resolution is not about, they can build an administrative office, they can build a shop. We're just, can they build? I don't understand why everybody is so hung up on the size and what it's going to be used for. And, you know, it was their money. Are we going to reimburse them the money that they've spent on the sewage and all that stuff? To me, it's just, why was this issue not brought up before? And it's not, the water board decided to do this. I mean, it's their decision. And if they needed approval, why didn't you tell them during this whole process, you need to get approval from the county commission first?
I did.
The whole time, back these 4 years that it's been going on.
I've not been on that board 4 years. I've
But-
been on there 2 years.
Okay.
And from day one, I questioned, I didn't understand the relationship and why things were happening in water board without having county commission approval. And the explanation mostly from the mayor was that the county commission turned over the water departments running to the water department, which they did, the day-to-day operations. But I think there's still a role to be played that the county commission has in some of these major decisions.
But then
That
again,
was
that's
the
your
one-
opinion. That's
Excuse
your
me.
opinion.
Excuse me, you're asking me and I'm trying to answer you. You want me to pass the gavel and sit down here and talk to answer you? I'll be glad to.
That's fine.
If you don't, if somebody objects to me trying to answer a question posed to me directly, I did. Most of the time, the answer was from the mayor that we had turned it all over to the water department. And I questioned whether the county commission still had decisions particularly on us building a building, us, the water department, on county property without the county commission's approval. Not, you know, we should have been approving their budget. We should have been doing a lot of things that haven't been done. We might not have even supposed to them buying the property. It probably should have come from the county. I don't know. A lot of these things came along, but I did question repeatedly. And I did ask to delay the vote to do this until we could get some of these questions answered. And the vote was 4 yes, 1 no to proceed with it. Immediately, I contacted the mayor and Mr. Beller to try to set up a meeting to try to get these questions answered by council. And once we did meet, and that's how we got to here. Did that answer your question?
Why wasn't it done before? Why didn't you go to the legal counsel before? It just seems like.
There wasn't anything had been voted on to do. You know, I proposed that we looked at the building down behind there, that metal 60,000 square foot building, as a possibility to go down there. When Tommy checked on that, if I remember correctly, he came back and said they want $1,200,000 for that property. And the board said, we're not going to spend that kind of money. So I guess I thought when this building came back in $1,200,000 plus, that we wouldn't spend that money on it. And I was a bit surprised when it didn't seem like the amount mattered. And that's all I can answer. It's not to necessarily, like I said in the very first meeting, I believe the water board needs a building. They need this building. I am just of the opinion, my personal opinion, that that's a bad place to put it for a lot of reasons. And my opinion to the negative is not a good enough reason for y'all to stop the project if you think it's a great project. It's that simple. But I am very adamant that this body needed to make that decision. And I've tried to make sure that that happened. Mr. Buckmaster.
On page 4 of 29 of the plans submitted by the water department shows the actual building. I'd like to question whether to the south of the proposed building, according to my measurements, there's a lot of room for expansion of equipment storage, even so much as a garage to put it in if you need to expand. I also was kind of curious with the reconfiguration of the driveway. According to that drawing, the driveway that goes around by the administrative building next to the ramp appears to be unnecessary. And then there's a large grassy area between it and the parking lot, which isn't being used for anything right now. And I'm not sure why it may not be usable, but
drainage. Would
that also be a place to either expand a parking lot or the administrative building? And I don't know that answer I'm asking.
Well, I think there's a drainage swale there that takes water runoff that would have to be addressed. But yes, there is more room there in that area. Mr. Ferguson?
Yes, I'd like to.
It'll go in a minute. It won't squeak. I want to talk to I think the water board did what it thought it should do in the proceedings that it was doing. I think it was doing everything it was instructed to do. I personally have a person on the board that I'm friends with, and the person said in a meeting recently, hey, trust us. And I think there to a degree we should trust them. And I believe I'm kind of the opinion, I want everybody to hear that I do think they probably need an administrative building. They have decided that's what they needed. It grew in its project, maybe more so than what we thought it would in the beginnings. But one of the reasons why I personally think it comes before county commission, number one, it's a department of the county, just like all the other departments. This department creates revenues. I want that department, I want those people on the board to understand that They create revenues, but this is still the governing body at the end of the day. I don't believe that there's anybody on the water board presently that lives in District 8 that represents the people that live in my district. And I've got people that live in my district that have told me on more than one occasion, every time I go to the water department to ask to see if I can get water in my road, the answer has always been, we don't have enough money for you. Come back and see us later. And then it's hard to answer that to them when we're talking about an over $1 million project, which is probably necessary. I'm not saying it's not. But until now, there's no voice. There's nobody, the water board, I can go to the water board meeting, but I don't have any representation really. In my opinion, I don't until we get to here. So this is where we get our questions answered as part of the process. I think we're part of the process in this. And no, I don't like where it's located. Do I think they need a building? Yeah, they probably do. But I have also talked to Tommy about this, and I talked to him about it tonight. I said, the areas of the county that don't have any water, there's certain areas that are pretty remote. I live in a remote area myself. But can we not come up with certain targets to help people that don't have water someday have water? I had one of my constituents say, Bill, I'd be happy to pay a little bit more if I could get everybody some water. Sometimes it's pitching in and doing a little help. I also believe that we might get in a little bit of hot water with the state if we put a line too far. Maybe we wouldn't make enough money out of it. But in my humble opinion, sometimes it might be better to serve the people in the community more so than it is to worry about what's on your report card at the end of the day from the comptroller's office. Now, if we get in real trouble, that might be one thing. There's misdemeanors and there's felonies. But I had asked Tommy, is there a comprehensive plan to try to fill in the blanks? And he said, yes, to a degree, that they have looked to try to connect certain lines and improve water. So I think the thought has been there. But in terms of us actually being able to have, here's where we're going first. Here's where we're going second. I know I'm chasing a rabbit down a hole, but this is our opportunity in District 8. Well, I got 3 different places that don't have any water. And they need water. All of them are places where people live. How about we come up with I'd love for the water board to help us to come up with, you need a place to put your stuff in the administrative building, yes. But we also need a comprehensive plan to try to connect the dots. And being from District 8, we need help out there at District 8, and I'd like to hear some of that. So that's my 2 cents worth, and I'll be quiet and push my button off. But I want to get that out. I'm not against the water board not having a building, but I am in favor of us doing that in conjunction with certain people in this county being able to obtain water that right now don't have it, that every time they go knock on the door, they say there's no money for it. Because if I understand this correctly, this project we're talking about will be paid for in 1.5 to 2 years. If that's the case, that's over $1 million. Maybe we can set aside a little bit in the future to help out there on Griff Hollow, to help out there on Honeysuckle, to help all the other places that are in the county. Those 2 I know because they're in Stephen Mine District. And I would ask the water board to continue to do what we had asked them to do to start with, which I think they did their job. They did what they're supposed to. And I do trust some of their decisions, but part of the decision-making process comes through here too. And that's kind of where we are tonight.
Mr. Harsh.
I think based upon what the county attorney has told us, when we've asked him, the reason why this is before the county commission is because this property is deeded to the county, and only the county legislative body can give approval to a building being built on county property. And I think that's what our county attorney has told us. And I think that's why this is before this body. And then you have Mr. Clarity's question, well, was the conveyance done correctly? And if not, do we need not to remedy that first before we take up this issue of putting a building on this property, either yes or no to that issue? Do we need to straighten out the conveyance first?
Mr. Miller.
As long as you've given adequate notice and of course, how long has that property been? What was the date of that deed?
5 years.
I believe it was August 9th, 2018.
I mean, if you make a curative motion, I don't think you're gonna have a problem with that because you're still on the same topic that you've been on. I know Mr. Clarity said, well, we can't decide this because we haven't really decided this. Go ahead and do it. go ahead and do that tonight. All right.
But it's not on our agenda, though.
You don't, what,
Special call meeting, is that not for this one purpose?
what did you have, what did you have your notice exactly say?
I mean, I would like to do it tonight, do it.
My understanding, it was a call commission meeting to discuss the water department construction. Is that correct, Mayor?
That's what the agenda says, but he's asked specifically what did the notice given to the public, so that would be what was printed in the newspaper. What did it state? And I'm trying to see if I can find the exact wording.
Like I said, there's a lot of. You have it. Amy has it. Let her read it, please.
The notice that was sent out, excuse me for a moment, let me turn that down. The notice that was sent out is Chairman Dwight Jewell and Mayor Stephen Chambers have jointly called a special meeting of the Hartsville-Trousdale County Commission to be held on Monday, July 19th, 2021 at 7:30 in the county courthouse. Discussion will be over Resolution 2021-18-722, Water Department Building Construction at 328 Broadway Back Lot. The Water and Sewer Board has stated an urgency with this item.
Adequate notice in order for having that for consideration tonight. And I guess what would be the objection from the read that to me one more time, please.
Discussion will be over Resolution 2021-18-722, Water Department Building Construction at 328 Broadway Back Lot.
I would think my only issue I'd have with it is in all due respect, Mr. Clarity, is the discussions that we had in that previous meeting in relationship to the consideration that was given for the transfer of that property. I don't feel like that it's inappropriate for that to be considered tonight. You're talking about the resolution itself, but even assuming if that is not the case, then you're still got the same topic in front of you. And I don't think it's maybe for lack of a better description, I think you're thinking in a logical sequence, this got to be done before we take this action. Well, regardless of what you do, whether it's tonight or another night, you're still going to have to cure that issue. As far as this body is going to have to make a decision. You're not talking about any other piece of property that you're dealing with. You're talking about the same piece of property that we're going to construct a building on. I would say that you've put enough information out there for what I would consider adequate notice for that topic. So it would be my opinion that you can do that tonight. Does that answer your question, sir?
For the call meeting, the only thing you could discuss was what was on the agenda. That would be adding a different topic to the agenda.
Your notice is what you give to the public, sir, and have you even set your agenda for tonight?
The only thing that we're supposedly discussed is the construction of the building for a call meeting. Am I correct or not?
Well, your agenda says is an item of, it's got 6 items on it. One of them is active business. Resolution 2021-18-722, Water and Sewer Department Construction. And then you've got the context of the resolution itself, which makes the reference to the property location by map, group, and parcel number, 328 Broadway.
I feel that it would be appropriate if someone wants to make the motion to take it up, since it does pertain to the topic that we're dealing with, and that is 328 Broadway in the Water Department building and part of those questions. So I would have to concur with Mr. Beller. Mayor, would you like to add anything to that?
No, I think Mr. Beller put it succinctly in addressing the legal question that was asked.
Mr. Walsh?
I guess my comments are more of a point of order. We had a work session earlier tonight that discussed that resolution. None of these topics were brought up. You have an agenda for the specially called meeting that is talking about this resolution. Although my understanding was the main reason for this meeting was about the violation of sunshine law. The violation of sunshine, can't speak tonight, sunshine law came about when commissioners were discussing this resolution topic. So the sunshine law violation went on the agenda for a specially called meeting. We're like going way off on a tangent here on all kinds of things. It's not on the agenda about the sunshine law violation. It's about the resolution. We didn't discuss the resolution back in the work session. So why are we discussing it now when this meeting was called? Specifically, what I understood was the violation of the sunshine law, which wasn't on the agenda anyway.
No, sir, it was not. It was specifically called to address this resolution, that is the construction of the proposed water department building. I brought up the Open Meetings Act violation to get it cured because these discussions happened outside any specific meeting. That was not an item on the agenda. That was to get the discussion points in the discussion of this resolution, make sure it was out there, get it addressed so there is no possible legal action that can be taken in the future. That was not an agenda item. That is part of the discussion of this resolution.
No, the resolution is about building the building, had nothing to do with whether these certain commissioners were talking about that. The violation of sunshine law pertained to discussion about this resolution, but that's still not on the agenda. Again, I wasn't part of that conversation you're referring to as violation of sunshine law, but I sat over here and then you basically threatened to take it in front of the water board, have somebody complain, which again, that sunshine law violation is not on tonight's agenda, but now we're discussing all these points about this resolution when we didn't do it in the work session we had over 2 hours ago. So to me, we're way off track of what was called here for a special meeting. If we want to discuss this resolution, it should have been done tonight during the work session, not the specifically special called meeting to address the violation of sunshine law to where there's no legal actions against these commissioners or the county. We're way off topic. It's past 9 o'clock at night and we're not even on the topic that this agenda talked about. So we started off with the violation of sunshine law. So if these other issues were here, why weren't they discussed during the work session, Mayor? Why didn't you bring these things up during the work session?
First of all, again, that is not an amendment to the agenda discussion discussing what was just talked about in that meeting. That is curing a violation of this particular issue that is the specific reading for the meeting. As far as why was it not discussed at the work session, you gave specific notice for a item to be addressed at 7:30 about construction of a water department, yet you want to have the discussion on that at 7 o'clock, 30 minutes before the people were told this discussion was going to happen. I disagree with that course of action. I think it was held at the proper time. It was held at 7:30 in accordance with the notice that was given to the public. The problem was I wanted to make sure the discussion that was held on July 8th pertaining to this resolution and the construction of this building was brought out to the public, addressed here, and any possible violation of the Open Meetings Act addressed. I contacted the county attorney. He agreed with me that that was a violation of the Open Meetings Act. I brought it up at the beginning of this meeting. The topics that were discussed were particularly on point for this resolution. So my point still stands. That was not an amendment to the agenda. That was specifically the item on the agenda, and those discussions were relevant to that topic. And matter of fact, there were questions that have been asked of myself, of you, I'm guessing, because I'm getting the same questions you are. So no, that was not an amendment of the agenda. That was to discuss the item that was on the agenda itself.
We shouldn't be discussing that, or we discuss it now. It shouldn't have done it during the work session. To me, it's false. We should have discussed it during the work session because it was on the agenda of the work session and it was public notice given also. The whole thing I got when I sat down here at the 7:30 meeting was the violation of the sunshine law, which has nothing, it has to do with the resolution. That's what these commissioners were talking about. They weren't talking about the zoning of the ordinance of the tow-in lot or anything like that. They were talking about this. They violated the sunshine law with this topic of resolution. So my opinion is we should not be talking about the ins and outs of this resolution. That should have been done during the work session.
I will again say that the notice that was given specifically said this was going to be the topic for the 7:30 meeting. You were given an agenda that specifically shows resolution, let's see, resolution 2021-18-722, water and sewer department construction. Does not mention Open Meetings Act violation. I brought that up because there was discussions had about the issue that was being addressed in this special called meeting that need to be brought out, discussed again to cure any possible violations. That's not an amendment to the agenda. That is curing a violation on the topic that was specifically given the notice for and on the agenda itself.
That's a topic of the violation of sunshine law was not on the agenda. But you brought it up and discussed it. So I'll just close my conversation with, I'll make a motion to adjourn.
I had someone asking to be recognized, so hold your motion, please. Ms. Parr.
Based upon what our county attorney is telling us that we can take up this tonight, I at least would like to clear one thing, and therefore I would move that the county accept this property as a legal transfer by this legislative body passing its judgment on it.
Your motion's out of order because we do have a motion on the floor. Mr. Walsh, restate your motion, please. Your own.
I'll amend my motion to take it up after we do what Commissioner Harsh has said, and I'll second his motion. I'm pulling my motion off right
Okay, you
now.
withdraw your motion. Mr. Harsh, restate your motion.
I move that the legislative body accept this piece of property, the conveyance that was made back, 5 years ago or so, as a legal transfer to the county, I move the legislative body accept the sale of this property and the legal transfer.
Mr. Beller, is there any problems with that? Mr. Mayor, any problems with that?
I defer to the county attorney. He said there's no issues.
Okay. Who was the second? Mr. Walsh has a second. Have a motion by Mr. Harsh and a second by Mr. Walsh to accept the property in question. It was purchased by the water board in the name of the county. And is that your motion?
That's the county, it was purchased, the county purchased. They paid for it, but it was conveyed to the county.
To the county. Okay. Everybody understand? Everybody good with this? Okay. Any discussion on it? Any questions on it? Okay. Let's do a roll call on this, please. And I can call for a roll call vote, and I'm calling for a roll call vote. Before I get the eye rolls.
Kimberly Atwood. Yes. Mary Ann Baker. Yes. Ken Buckmaster.
Yes.
Shane Burton.
Yes.
Gary Clary.
Yes.
Richard Davis.
Yes.
Boyd Dickey.
Yes.
Bill Ferguson. Jerry Ford. Bubba Gregory. Landon Dudley.
Yes.
Richard Marsh.
Yes.
Dwight Jewell.
Yes.
Richard Johnson. Yes. Rachel. David Nallner.
Yes.
Amber Russell. Yes. Lonnie Taylor.
Yes.
Gary Walsh.
Yes.
Steve Wood.
Yes.
19 yes, 1 absent.
Motion does pass. So that answered the question of the ownership of the property once and forever. Thank you. Okay, we'll further. Mr. Walsh, you're recognized.
Make a motion to adjourn.
I have a second by Ms. Russell. We have a motion and a second to adjourn. Roll call, please. Non-debatable, but it is votable.
Beverly Atwood.
The motion is to adjourn. A yes would be adjournment, a no would be to continue.
Mary Ann Baker. No. Ken Buckmaster.
No.
Shane Burke.
No.
Gary Clarity. Richard Davis.
No.
Coy Dickey.
No.
Bill Ferguson.
No.
Jerry Ford. Bubba Gregory.
No.
Landon Gully. Richard Harsh.
No.
Dwight Jewell.
No.
Richard Johnson. David Noner.
No.
Amber Russell. No. Lonnie Taylor. Gary Walsh.
Yes.
Steve Whitaker.
What's your vote?
4 yes and 15 no.
Motion to adjourn fails. We will continue. Mr. Harsh.
I move that we have a vote on this resolution. I don't move necessarily to approve it, but this body take a vote on this resolution.
You need to make a motion to approve it or
You gotta prove this.
I mean, that's why we just voted no, was to try to vote on it.
I move to disapprove this motion.
The motion is to disapprove. Do I have a second? Mr. Ford makes a second. I have a motion by Mr. Harsh and a second by Mr. Ford to disapprove it. Ms. Baker, you're recognized.
I had a motion, had pushed my button to be recognized, to make a motion to approve it. And I don't know if you can tell with this system, the order of who pushed their button first.
Well, I've been
I don't
trying to watch that.
I know,
and
and I apologize. I just, after the motion to adjourn was denied, I hit my button. But, so I don't know, but.
I'm sorry. What was your motion going?
To approve the resolution.
I need it, but as soon as it got done too. We need to come to a decision. on
Right.
this one way or the other.
Right.
Either way.
I think either way, we're going to be voting on it.
Yeah, either way.
It's better to have a motion to approve than it is to have a motion to disapprove, because it can be confusing, but we've already had a motion in a second.
But
Mr. Ford,
his initial motion was to call for the vote. It wasn't for or against until you ask.
I feel like we have a valid motion and a second. Either way, whether we're voting to approve it or to disapprove it, it's voting one to dispose of this. So it's not my preferred motion, but it's a valid motion. Mr. Beller, is there any problem with that motion? To disapprove?
Heard a motion to approve, disapprove, and a motion to, and a second on that.
That's
And-
correct.
And the chair recognizes.
Yes. Okay. Any other discussion on this? Yes, sir. Mr. Gregory.
Approved, $192,000 that they've done spent. Does the county got to reimburse them that?
That is not a part of the discussion. sure that could be an argument one way or the other for your vote, but that's not a part of the discussion. Okay. Any other discussion, any other questions? The motion is to disapprove by Mr. Harsh, second by Mr. Ford. Ms. Rita, please call the roll. If you vote yes, you're not allowed to let them do it. If you vote no, you're letting them do it. Or it would come back for a motion to do it, I guess. I don't know. Tired too. The motion is to disapprove this resolution. Okay. The motion is to disapprove it. If we disapprove it, that ends it tonight. Am I correct? Okay. Here we go. If you vote yes, you're disapproving it. If you vote no, you're not. If you want it, you vote no. If you don't want it, you vote yes. Is that clear as mud? Am I backwards? I see. Mr. Beller.
The motion that has been made is a motion to disapprove the resolution that has been presented to you. If you vote yes on that motion to disapprove, you're voting to disapprove that resolution. That's all you're doing.
Okay. Ms. Rita, whenever you're ready.
Beverly Atwood.
No.
Mary Ann Baker.
No.
Ken Buckmaster.
No.
Shane Burton.
No.
Gary Clarity.
Yes.
Richard Davis.
No.
Coy Dickey.
Yes.
Bill Ferguson.
Yes.
Jerry Ford. Bubba Gregory.
No.
Landon Gully.
Yes.
Richard Harsh.
Yes.
Dwight Jewell.
Yes.
Richard Johnson. David Nollner.
No.
Amber Russell.
No.
Lonnie Taylor.
No.
Gary Walsh.
Yes.
Steve Whitaker.
Yes.
9 yes. 8, 9, 10 no, 1 absent.
Okay, so the motion to disapprove fails. Okay. No, it does not. We will take up the question, Ms. Okay, we have a motion to approve the resolution. Pardon? Sorry, Mr. Buckmaster. Go ahead.
All right, she got me.
Okay. Mr. Gregory. Okay. We have a motion to approve by Ms. Baker and a second by Mr. Gregory. Any discussion on this? Okay. Whenever you're ready, Ms. Rita. This time a yes is a yes.
Beverly Atwood.
Yes.
Mary Ann Baker.
Yes.
Ken Buckmaster.
Yes.
Shane Burton.
Yes.
Gary Clarity.
No.
Richard Davis.
Yes.
Coy Dickey. Bill Ferguson. Jerry Ford. Bubba Gregory.
Yes.
Landon Gully.
No.
Richard Harsh.
No.
Dwight Jewell.
No.
Richard Johnson.
Yes.
David Nollner.
Yes.
Amber Russell.
Yes.
Lonnie Taylor.
Yes.
Gary Walsh.
No.
Steve Whitaker.
No.
10 yes. 9 no, 1 absent.
Motion does carry. I think this concludes all the business that we had on the agenda. I'm sorry, Ms. Baker, I didn't.
I was gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Pardon?
I was gonna make a motion to adjourn.
Okay.
I had a question first, though.
Okay.
Since we passed that resolution tonight, does it need to be taken off next Monday night's agenda?
We will, when we approve the agenda. Okay. Ms. Baker? Ms. Baker, you recognized?
To adjourn.
Have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Mr. Walsh gets second. All in favor, say aye. Thank you, everyone.